Hello friends, this video on biological classification part 3 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. So again, in due course of time, another classification came up which was given by Whittaker. So Whittaker finally came up with the 5 kingdom classification. So he said that all living organisms existing on this earth can be grouped into 5 categories. So what was his basis of classification? On what basis did he classify things? He considered the cell structure, body organization, and mode and source of nutrition. So Whittaker did this classification on the basis of cell structure, body organization, and mode and source of nutrition. So he took into consideration quite a couple of things. So now things turned out to be a success. So this classification was a way better than the previous trials of classifying organisms. So here, since the cell structure was taken into consideration, so the eukaryotes and prokaryotes could be distinguished. They fell into different groups. Again, the body organization were taken into consideration. So the simpler organisms were together, little more complex were together. Again, very complex organisms were together. Now, how did that complexity define? How was the complexity defined? What defines the complexity? We will get to know about that as we discuss about each of those groups. Mode and source of nutrition. So now we also knew which organisms are autotrophic, which are heterotrophic, what kind of heterotrophic, whether it is parasitic or saprophytes or what it is. So these 3 things were taken into consideration to classify life forms, and based on this, all living organisms were broadly classified into 5 groups. Each of this group is known as a kingdom. So that is why it is often known as Whittaker's 5 kingdom classification. So what are those 5 kingdoms? Monera, Protista, fungi, plantae, and animalia. So plantae and animalia are still there, but now plantae will have only the plants, animalia will have only the animals. Now all other extra things which were there, which in case of the 2 kingdom classification, we were telling that they are unable to fall in any of the categories. So those organisms were divided into these 3 kingdoms: Monera, Protista, and fungi. So now in this lesson, our agenda is to discuss about the first 3 kingdoms in detail, that is Monera, Protista, and fungi. Now since plantae and animalia are more vast, so we will talk about plantae in our next lesson and animalia in the subsequent lesson, right? So now you are clear what are we going to study here. We'll talk about Monera, Protista, and fungi. So before that, let us quickly see the hierarchy. In our previous lesson, we talked about the taxonomic hierarchy, right? There we have used the term kingdom. Do you remember? So kingdom was the highest level of the taxonomic hierarchy. Now inside that kingdom, you will have again subdivisions. Again, those subdivisions will again have sub-subdivisions. Again, they will again have sub-sub-subdivisions. It was like that, right? Because only these 5 kingdoms cannot classify all different life forms. Because even like whatever falls under Monera, all are not going to share the exactly same characters. Even they will have some dissimilarities. So based upon that, they are again grouped into subgroups. So that is why under kingdom, we have different phylum for animals and we use the term division for plants. So inside one kingdom, you have different phylum. Inside one phylum, you have different classes. Inside one class, you have different orders. One order, you have different families. Inside one family, you have different genus, and inside a genus, you have species. So this is how the hierarchy is, right? So now once you follow this hierarchy, you will see that you are able to accommodate almost all animals that exist on this earth. following this hierarchy. So now you can just imagine that it was not a simple job at all to classify the life forms, because they are so very different from each other that we just cannot put anybody with anybody else based upon 1 or 2, 3 characteristics, right? So each kingdom will have different phyla. So how are those phylum created? Based upon the similarities and dissimilarities. Again, each phylum will have different classes. Each class orders, again, family, genus and species. So when I talk about species, I have discussed it a couple of times in our previous lesson, and that is why I am not going to spend a lot on these taxonomic hierarchy, because the last lesson was dedicated to these, right? So if any one of you are not clear with these hierarchy, you can refer to the previous lesson. Now let me quickly take one example so that you get a better understanding. For example, when you look at, let us say when you compare a lion with another lion, what do you see? They both share a lot of similarities, right? Maybe they are not exactly identical. They'll have slight differences here and there, but they have a lot of similarities. Now, if you compare that lion with a tiger, what happens? The similarities decrease, but still you have some similarities. The way they walk, they have 4 limbs, they have a tail, so some similarities. Now, if you compare the same lion with a leopard, again, similarities are there, it decreased. You compare it with a cat, what happens? The similarities decreased a lot. But still, somehow you feel that it is more similar to a cat than to a dog, right? So what do we say? We say that cat, tiger, leopard, they all belong to the same family. But when we compared 2 tigers, they belonged to the same species. Like when we compare 2 tigers, they belong to the same species. Both are tigers. So a lot of similarities. When we compared a tiger with a lion, they were different species, but those different species fall under the same genus. Now when we compare a tiger, a lion and a cat, the similarities decreased further, but still somewhat similarities are there because they all belong to the same family. Now if you compare the tiger, lion, cat with a dog, you see the similarities are not there, at least the similarities are not visible. But when you look at their food habits, you see that all of them are carnivores, all of them eat flesh. So there is some similarity again. So you can say that they all fall under the same order. So they all are under the same order, but dog belongs to a different family, different genus, different species. Cat belongs to a specific family, the same family to which the tiger belongs to, but then again cat belongs to a different genus, tiger belongs to a different genus. When you compare 2 tigers, when you compare a tiger and a lion, they both belong to the same genus, but they belong to 2 different species. So that is how the final shape of classification came out. So this is how the life forms were finally classified. Right? So I will not discuss any further on the process of classification because I think I have talked about it a lot in your previous lesson. So please refer that lesson if you are not clear with the idea. So for now, we will start with our discussion on these 5 kingdoms which I mentioned: Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae and Animalia. So first we will start with Monera. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online test, get free study material, find tutors and mentors. Thank you once again.